China in trouble? Trump's next move could seize billions in Chinese assets. Something big is about to happen, something China never saw coming. The assets of Xi Jinping's country, worth billions of dollars, are now in danger. One strategic move from America and China's entire economy could be shaken. Just like the US seized Russia's assets and isolated it from global trade, the same could happen to China. The question now is, has China's downfall begun? Could Donald Trump's next strike be so devastating that it wipes out decades of China's progress? That's the topic we'll explore in depth today. But before we begin, if you are new to our channel, please don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our latest updates. Now, let's dive in. In recent months, the US-China trade war has reached a whole new level. What started as a tariff battle has now escalated to targeting China's overseas assets. Former central bank advisor and senior Chinese economist 𝐟𝐨𝐥𝐿 himself has warned that the US might weaponize the dollar. If that happens, China could face consequences even more severe than Russia did. According to a report published in the South China Morning Post, 𝐟𝐨𝐥𝐿 stated at a forum held in Beijing that the likelihood of the US using the dollar as a political weapon has increased significantly. He said that if the US targets China's foreign assets, China could suffer enormous losses. 𝐟𝐨𝐿 warned that China must take concrete steps in time to protect its assets. He clearly told Chinese officials that they should be prepared for an economic war, one that won't involve bombs and guns, but attacks through dollars and bonds. This warning comes at a time when China holds around $10 trillion in foreign assets. Of this, approximately $3.2 trillion is in the form of forex reserves, and a large part of it is held in US dollars. In Indian terms, this amount is around 850 lakh crore rupees. That means, if the US adopts a strategy to freeze or seize these assets, China could face a loss of trillions in one single blow. This concern hasn't arisen out of nowhere. In fact, after the Russia-Ukraine war, the US seized about $300 billion worth of Russian assets. Now, experts fear that if the US takes a similar step, China could also face a similar economic shock. 𝐟𝐨𝐿 believes that the US might be working on a plan like the Mar-a-Lago Accord. This is a hypothetical plan in which the US could convert all dollar-denominated debts owed to foreign creditors into 100-year bonds. Simply put, the US would extend the repayment timeline so far that the impact would be similar to a default. If this happens, it could be a major economic disaster for China. Not only would the value of China's foreign assets plummet due to such a policy, but its global financial credit standing would also be severely damaged. Now the question is, why would the US do this? The reality is that the conflict between China and the US isn't just about tariffs. It's a strategic confrontation involving technology, finance, supply chains, and global leadership. And the US knows that if it truly wants to weaken China, it must strike at its financial structure. The scariest part of this entire development is that most of China's foreign assets are actually located in the United States. Treasury securities, dollar-denominated bonds, and bank deposits, all of it lies within America's control. And if the US suddenly implements an aggressive policy, China's entire fund could be blocked in an instant. 𝐟𝐨𝐿 has suggested some measures in response. He said that China should now rebalance its foreign assets. It needs to reduce dependence on the US and diversify its holdings from dollars into euros, yen, or other currencies. He also mentioned that before the US potentially tightens restrictions, China should consider transferring some of its funds into shell companies or neutral countries, where US sanctions would have minimal effect. This is a similar strategy adopted by several nations after sanctions were imposed on Russia. Looking at history, it's clear that US economic policies have never been limited to just economics. The US has consistently used the dollar as a tool to pursue its geopolitical strategies. That's why, when Russia was attacked, America's first move was to target its assets and eject it from the global financial system. Now, this very threat looms over China. The US has already tightened its grip on Chinese tech giants like Huawei and TikTok. And if it turns its attention to China's foreign assets next, it would amount to a full-scale financial siege. On the other hand, China is also worried that the faster it grows, the faster its list of adversaries is growing too. Western nations increasingly view China as a strategic threat, and if the US gets any opportunity, it won't hesitate to strike against China. That's why China is now trying to pull out of US treasuries as soon as possible. Since 2017, China has sold off around 25% of its US bonds. But this isn't an easy move, because if China suddenly dumps all its holdings, the value of those bonds would drop, ultimately hurting China itself. And here lies another alarming reality. If the US freezes China's assets, the impact won't be limited to China alone. The global financial markets will face massive disruption. Trust in the US dollar could be shaken. Most importantly, the foreign assets of many smaller countries, held in dollars, could also be at risk. That's why experts like 𝐟𝐨𝐥𝐿 are warning that this is not just a battle for one nation, but a wake-up call for the entire global economy. He emphasized that China must go beyond merely imposing retaliatory tariffs and develop a solid financial defense strategy. The most crucial part of this strategy is reducing dependency on the US dollar. China needs to reform its trade policy, investment model, and reserve structure to explore alternative financial systems. Secondly, China should actively promote the use of the yuan in international trade. Just as countries like India, Russia, and Iran are shifting towards local currency-based trade, China must also prioritize yuan-based transactions. Thirdly, China now needs to open a diplomatic front against the US. It must work to build pressure by aligning with the European Union, African nations, and ASEAN countries to challenge American policies on a broader geopolitical level. In summary, China now stands at a critical crossroads where it must decide whether to bow to US pressure or lay the foundation for a new economic order. Caught in Trump's strategic web, will China be able to maneuver its way out with tactical wisdom this time? Or will history repeat itself, and China, like Russia, fall victim to an American economic surgical strike? For now, the answer lies hidden in the womb of the future. But one thing is certain, if the US truly weaponizes the dollar, not only China but the entire global economy could enter a new era of uncertainty. And that is the real threat economists like 𝐟𝐨𝐿 are warning the world about.
Video has taught you something new. Do not forget to like and share this video so that this information can reach others as well. Your likes and shares are a source of inspiration for us. If you have any questions or suggestions, please let us know in the comments. It will be our honor to answer your questions and listen to suggestions. And yes, if you like our content, subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so that you stay connected with every new story. Thank you. GRT Business YouTube channel sources, news from various news agencies, opinion polls and other public sources. We try to ensure that every report and summary is accurate and verified, but we are not responsible for any dispute or error. Our aim is only to provide you with accurate information.